The severe telekinetic phenomena in the island of Thasos of northern Greece of the Aegean that upset the inhabitants. In the spring of 1938, a court ruling against people who were called to account to justice for the action of the quote-unquote ghosts that haunted their home in Thasos, as the locals claimed, had caused great upset to the inhabitants of this beautiful island. I've been there, it's beautiful, it's very green. The paradox was that the justice of the peace of Thasos sentenced an entire family to prison because there had been several telekinetic phenomena in their house. The event happened as follows. In March of 1938, in the house of the prefect of Thasos, Antonis Yanakis, very strange phenomena took place. Stones were hurled at the doors, glassware was mysteriously shattered, objects were overturned or suspended, and heavy furniture moved by itself. It looks like they're describing poltergeist here. And I have another poltergeist experience in Athens around that same time in one of the videos before this one. At first, it was thought that some sick human hand was creating all this chaos, and the family's attention was focused on revealing the culprit. The owner, Antonis Yanakis, his wife, the elderly aunt of his wife, and the maid Sevasti Spanokli from Samothrace, age 19, lived in the house. Even when a room was locked, everything inside, small items, clothing, utensils, and furniture, had been mysteriously moved, overturned, or dismantled. Fear and anarchy reigned in the house, as inanimate things seemed to have acquired their own entity and will. The one thing that the frightened tenants of the house managed to find out was that the inexplicably violent phenomena only stopped when the maid Sevasti was missing. The Greek press had repeatedly dealt with similar phenomena at the time. Thanks to the explanations given by the Society for Psychological Research through the distinguished president Angelos Tanagras, the people now knew that these were telekinetic phenomena which were not caused by spirits, but by people with disturbed psychosynthesis, usually during adolescence. With this in mind, Antonis Yanakis did not want to resort to sanctifications and exorcisms, but eagerly waited for the unprecedented dance of his home furniture to end, trying only to limit the damage as much as possible. This unorthodox situation soon became known throughout the island of Thasos, and of course aroused great curiosity and interest of the inhabitants, monopolizing the discussion between them. But it was the turn of the police authority, as he was obliged after the noise that was created. The police asked to find out what was happening, and the perception that was formed was that everything that the Yanakis family was spreading was false, and that it was an inappropriate prank. So he sued the whole family for spreading false news. But because the phenomena continued unabated and the commotion continued, the police authority imposed a second lawsuit on the quote-unquote uncorrected occupants of this troubled house. In fact, during the trial, the Justice of the Peace, Vlasios Mastelos, sentenced the host, his wife, and the maid Sevasti to 25 days in prison each. Their protests, as well as the argument that they had absolutely no interest in causing so much damage to their own home, did not help at all. The unbelievable condemnation caused the residents discomfort, mainly because the convicted family was respectable and was not considered capable of directing such farces. All the islanders sided with Antonis Yanakis, and the president of the community, Mr. Klonaris, telegraphed to the psychiatric research company asking its president, Angelos Tanagras, to go to the island of Thasos to personally investigate this sensitive issue. Thus, Angelos Tanagras, due to the seriousness of the situation, accepted the invitation. He was welcomed in Thasos by the owner of the disturbed house where the telekinetic phenomena took place. The president of the community and all the prominent people of the place welcomed him with open arms. The most probable cause of the phenomenon was considered, from the first moment, the maid Sevasti. That's the 19-year-old maid. That is why she was immediately subjected to a medical examination by Angelos Tanagras, the doctor Mr. Xenakis, and his colleagues, Mrs. Laganakos, and eventually it was discovered that she was a disturbed person. Sevasti Spanokli, although she was 19 years old, was not menstruating. It was also externally characterized by she had nausea. She had flat feet, slowness of reaction to vivid emotions, while it was observed that she was hypnotized very easily with complete reversal of the eyeballs. Because it's known that telekinetic phenomena are closely related to abnormalities of the genital functions, the result of the medical examination reinforced the perception that the 19-year-old maid was the cause of these powerful phenomena. However, the claim had to be confirmed through experiments, that is, to carry out the automatic movement of objects in the presence of Angelos Tanagras and the other two doctors. So they placed various objects in the cornice of the fireplace in such a way that their possible movement would be immediately noticeable by all those present. Among other things, a heavy iron shoe bone was placed on a nail in the fireplace, from which it came out with great difficulty. No one was allowed near the fireplace. The attendees, the doctor, Mrs. Langanaku, the doctor, Mr. Xenakis, the president of the community, Mr. Clonaris, the distinguished Mr. Lambrinis and Mr. Nikolaris, the director of the printing house, Mr. Petropoulos, and the journalist from Salonika, Mr. Tahoyanis, were asked to ask psychic, as it turned out, respected, so not as to affect her. Angelos Tanagras did not fail to warn the audience that they may have to wait 2 or 3 days, as these psychogenetic phenomena are purely dependent on the subconscious and are irrelevant to the desire of the person causing them. After waiting for about an hour and a half, suddenly a very loud metal bang was heard. The audience was amazed to see that she had been challenged by the heavy iron bone of the shoe, which had slipped from its place and was thrown with great force at the opposite wall. In fact, Dr. Xenakis happened to see the entire course of this heavy metal object from the moment it left the nail and watched it erase a trajectory contrary to the laws of gravity and violently hurled at a long distance. Their suspicions were confirmed. The extremely severe phenomena, once manifested at that moment, continued uninterrupted and lasted until 2 after midnight. Glasses and cups were crushed, objects were suspended and then moved, a box of sugar fell and spilled its contents, while a decorative statuette broke into dozens of pieces. Also, the seats of the attendees changed places frequently. Thus, the president of the Society for Psychological Research immediately telegraphed to the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Security, confirming the authenticity of the phenomena. Meanwhile, on March 17, a second lawsuit, filed by the police against the long-suffering Yanakakis family, was examined before the same Justice of the Peace, Mr. Mastelos. The trial lasted 5 hours. The courtroom of the Magistrates' Court of Thasos, as well as the courtyard, were flooded with crowds who were eagerly awaiting the decision. After examining the witnesses who had attended the experiments, and after the submission of the relevant documents of Angelos Tanagras, who confirmed what had really happened, the Justice of the Peace finally issued an acquittal, although the public prosecutor, Lieutenant General Papadonopoulos, requested, and for the second time, the conviction of the accused. After the return of Angelos Tanagras back to Athens, Andonis Yanakis, in whose house these paradoxical events had taken place, sent him a letter in which he explained that the phenomenon continued unabated. He wrote to him that this was going on with a maid to the vineyard a few days ago. Small stones began to fall on him, and that invisible stone throwing continued throughout the journey. He also told him that in a room of the house was placed a wooden closet full of clothes, which more than 20 times had been found fallen behind the door, which they could hardly open each time. To end this story, they had to nail and tie the wardrobe to the wall at the same time. The president of the Society of Psychological Research, Angelos Tenagras, on his return from Thasos, was invited by the medical associations of Kavala, Salonika, and Volos and gave lectures on telekinetic phenomena. In fact, a branch of the Psychological Research Company was established in Volos on this occasion. This was published in the newspaper The Nightly Ivradini on the 3rd of April 1938. From Strange Press, I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.